Yesterday, she spent hours testifying in court. Joining us this morning is human behavior investigator and trial consultant Susan Constantine. Susan, good morning. It's good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Fascinating to listen to her and see her on the stand. Was there anything that stood out to you yesterday during her testimony?
Well, one of the things that stood out to me is how she was able to remain so collected. You know, we saw her from that very first video. You know, I'm right here in Orlando, and we saw her so frantic, and now we've seen a more calm demeanor. The thing that's really stood out to me is the lack of emotional affect. I mean, she was collected, but at the moments where they're most crucial, when she's talking about her love for George and about that moment when she realized that he was dead, there was no real empathy or compassion. So there is a sense of crispness about her. But all in all, I do think that she testified quite well, considering what we've seen in the past.
And so having said that, do you think that her testimony will help her or hurt her in this case?
I think it will help her, but it will really depend on the particular juror. I mean, you know, jurors all perceive that this information is nonverbal information and what she's testifying to differently. So you're going to have those that are empathizing with her, saw her as a victim, and then there's going to be others that might see her as a villain. Yeah. The thing is, they have to draw the correlation between the two and say she was both a victim, but also did it rise to the effect of that? Did she cause his, intentionally cause his death? And I think that's going to be a real difficult thing for jurors to really unravel together.
Can we circle back to what you said at the top in terms of how calm she was on the witness stand, in terms of not really showing emotion, right? And so there was no crying, there was no, you know, jurors could, and you would know this better than me, interpret that perhaps as maybe a lack of love or a lack of compassion for her partner.
Well, it was detachment. So there is a separation between her and George. So when if you remember, she's talking about the things that she really loved, what was great about her relationship. And all she did was just kind of bullet point them down. But where was the emotion when she talked about it? So I wanted to say, you know what, when things were really great, they were awesome, you know? And so I wanted to see some voice inflections, some tonality changes, some brightness in her eyes when she talked about the good things. But also I wanted to see her when the bad things happened. I wanted to see more, that her face was more disturbed, you know, more concern, fear. When she was talking about the fact that she was so fearful, in fact, she used the word terrified, her facial expression did not emote terrified emotions. So why wouldn't she be reliving some of that emotion that happened in the past? Because those were trigger memories. So that's where there's this disconnect, and that's what I'll be looking for today in the courtroom as the other experts starts to testify.
What I found interesting too is that when this jury is looking at her, and we just showed some video, I don't know if you were able to see it of the suitcase inside the courtroom. It is going to be interesting to see as this continues when they look back on her testimony and given everything else that has happened and all of the other evidence that's going to be presented, if that is ultimately going to be something, that lack of emotion, that will then help them decide a verdict either one way or the other.
Always does. When it always comes down to, you know what, she didn't have the compassion, she didn't have the empathy.
Said, everything I learned on their side, I bring to your side. And I built my firm on that commitment.
Taking the stand in her own.
We learned on their side.
And voting yes on 4 just the suitcase around a couple
affect.
Witness stand in terms of not really showing emotion, right? And so there was no crying, there was no.
So why wouldn't she be reliving some of that emotion that happened